Alfie Stirling joins us now, Chief Economist at the New Economics Foundation. Alfie, very good evening. You heard what Norman Lamont said there. Now, I imagine your approach would be slightly different to his. What do you take from his conversation there that you would most disagree with?
Well, the first thing I would say is I do agree, actually, about the point around not raising taxes too quickly. I think it's really important to focus on the macroeconomics here and appreciate that during a recession, it's very much okay to have a high deficit and rising debt because of the low interest rates, because there's so much spare capacity in the economy, unemployment, low inflation. So I agree with Norman on that. Where I disagree, and I think actually this is where it's worth just stepping back a bit and saying, this debate about tax, I don't think it's actually about should we be paying the rich more and the poorer less, and how do we redistribute it. I think there is a debate there, and I think you and I might disagree on that, and myself and Mr. Lamont might disagree. But what we're actually talking about right now with regards to the particular taxes the Treasury have identified is that for the same amount of income, people who take their income through dividends or capital gains pay less tax for the same amount of income than those on PAYE, and that's an arbitrary differential. It's an arbitrary and perverse impact.
Well, it isn't. It's generally because those people aren't getting the same benefits as people on PAYE. They're not getting holiday pay. They're not getting sick pay. Many of them will have taken risks to start the company. So it's not arbitrary at all.
No, I think it is arbitrary, and studies have shown this as well, because even prior to COVID, it was shown that the amount of tax that wasn't paid was nothing like equal to the lower welfare entitlement. So I think welfare entitlement has been narrowing between self-employed and employed. But actually, post-COVID, this has become an even less powerful argument because actually the self-employed, quite rightly in my opinion, have been supported at approximately similar levels to employees during this crisis.
There are 3 million people that have fallen through the cracks and haven't had any support whatsoever. But company directors...
And many of those have been zero-hour contracts. Many of those have been employees. Zero-hour contracts, for example, have been a key element within that. But they're paying national insurance as well.
But what about many of the 3 million do not fall into that category. They are people who have been company directors, and they're not rich people. They're people who don't necessarily earn a lot of money, and they haven't been getting any support at all.
So at the moment, if you take your income, let's say you earn £100,000, a very high salary. If you're on PAYE, you'll pay about £40,000 in tax on that income. If you take it in dividends, it's about £30,000. If you take it in capital gains, it's about £20,000. You can actually maximise it across all of those and pay even less if you optimise each of your allowances under each. The point is that, yes, there is a differential in the support people get from the welfare system, but you don't get half or a third the level of support if you're a company director compared to an employee. But that is how much less tax you're paying.
So when would you, if you think tax rises are one way of paying back the debt, in fact, it's really, in the end, the money has to come from tax revenue, whether it's from tax rises or the general tax take. When do you think that certain tax rises should be implemented? Clearly not this year.
So the point at which you want to raise taxes for macroeconomic reasons, and it's not really as simple about paying down debt, it's about monitoring whether the economy is overheating. So if you've got high inflation, if you've got unemployment so low that there's now a lot of rigidity in the labour market, that's the point at which you might want to start raising taxes. I don't think we're anywhere near there at the moment. Inflation is below half the target set by the Bank of England. We're expecting to see up to 4 million unemployed by Christmas. So I don't think that's actually the one to worry about so much. I'm more concerned about the fact that with an ageing population, with the fact that we're now aware how brittle the NHS is when faced with exogenous crises like a pandemic, we're now aware that we don't spend enough on these key public services. And that's something you can't borrow for in the long term. And it has to come with tax rises if we believe we want to, collectivise these risks, strengthen our NHS, strengthen our social care. So actually, I would say we should be looking to raise taxes over the medium term, probably about halfway into this Parliament. And we should be doing so in order to put in place long-term sustainable funding for our public services to make them more resilient to the types of shocks that we've just experienced.